Hey there guys, it's DMO73 bringing you the set review for the new set coming out next week, Moon Priestess Returns. This is going to be a 6-part series. This is one part for every single attribute, and then the last part for the cards that are multi-attributed, as well as the special magic stones. So this one is the fire. So we're going to go ahead and start with the ruler / J ruler, and then move into the cards as we go on. So the fire ruler for this set is Apostle of Creation. Pretty basic. He's a prophet, so he's not a human or anything. His J activate ability is just pay 1 red. So that automatically tells me that he's probably meant to be activated early. And hey look, let's look at his J ruler side and find out why. Kane, the Traitor of the Gods. I know it's not super zoomed in, but if you look at this artwork, it is just ridiculous. There's guns, he looks super geared up, ready to rock, and just tons of text. Kane, the Traitor of the Gods. Wizard, so that's pretty interesting. 700, 700. At first you're thinking, wait a minute, why is that so low? Then you look at his abilities. First off, he has First Strike, so any damage he does is going to get assigned first. So that's awesome. And then Continuous, this is the thing that really sets him apart. You cannot call Magic Stones. At the beginning of your main phase, put the top card of your Magic Stone deck into your Magic Stone area. So he automatically generates 1 Magic Stone every turn without having to tap or call for it. That again gears you to kind of what the whole point of this deck is, or his feel is definitely like Red Rush. He's meant to just rush down your opponent and attack almost every single turn if you possibly can. The second thing is Cognate. Resonators you control gain 200 and 0. So Cognate is a new race, which there are some new Cognates in the new set, and so he boosts all of those up. And then Activate, pay a fire. This card deals 200 damage to target Resonator. Combine that with First Strike. So you're going to swing in, they're going to block with something, pay a bunch of red to weaken their monster, use the First Strike ability to kill it, Kane gets through safely. So yeah, Red Rush is, I mean, it's, even by himself he's a powerhouse, but Red Rush is definitely what he's more geared for. Then we have the Apostle of Kane, the first card. 1-drop, Human Resonator, or Human Cognate. So obviously that's there. He's a 1-drop, 1-cost red, 500, 100. And then enter. If your J ruler attacked this turn, this card gains Swiftness until the end of the turn. So you attack with Kane, you play Apostle of Kane after that, and then you swing in for an extra 500. I mean, for a 1-drop, that is just ridiculous. So that's pretty cool, and the artwork is pretty neat. Pretty basic, but again, Red Rush wants those cards to be able to just swing in really fast. We also have the next Cognate is Jabal, the Grandsire of Nomads, on a motorbike with a chainsaw. Okay, 2-drop fire, Human Cognate, 600, 500, and then if this card attacks and your J ruler attacked this turn, you make something unable to block. So again, that Red Rush, your opponent has like 1 monster on board to be able to block with. Jabal just says, nope, that guy can't block, and you get to swing in for tons of damage. So that's really, really cool, and really, again, ties into that idea of just Red Rush down. And then you have Jabal, the Grandsire of Musicians. Again, another 2-drop, Human Cognate, 500, 600. And then her effect is, if she attacks and your J ruler attacked already, she deals 500 damage to something, potentially making her a 1k 600 if she's attacking a Resonator. So that's really cool, and again, helps you pick off those kind of smaller monsters that might be getting in your way when you're playing Red Rush. So that's pretty awesome. Moving on to some of the other Resonators, we have Black Goat. It's a fire 1-drop Cthulhu minion with an activate ability of pay 1 red and remove this card in your graveyard from the game to deal 200 damage to target player or Resonator. So, a little bit of extra burn stuff that activates from the graveyard, which is pretty interesting. Just a little basic 200, 200, nothing to shake a stick at, but you get a free block out of it. It's kind of like Red's Chump Block. You Chump Block with Black Goat, and then you can banish it from your graveyard to get some extra burn damage in. So that's pretty cool. Moving on, we have 40 Thieves. We talked about this before, but I'm just going to go over it again. It's a 1-fire, 1-colorless human story Resonator. Enter ability, draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards. Play in Red Rush, need to draw into the stuff you really want to get to, bam! Ta-da! There it is. So you can play like mono red and still have a draw engine. So that's pretty cool. Plus a 400/400 for a 2-drop isn't terrible, so that's pretty good. Then we have the fire, one of the 2 fire supers, Shub Niggurath, the Goddess of Fertility. Really hard to say. Has a 2 fire, 2 colorless cost. It's a Cthulhu. It also has Incarnation, which is a new ability that lets you, instead of paying the cost, you can banish creatures that match these attributes. So banish a fire, and then banish a fire or a dark in order to pay the cost to put it onto the board, as opposed to paying its will cost. Enter, search your deck for a card named Black Goat, put it onto your field, and shuffle your deck. So it's a free, essentially 2 bodies in 1. Activate, tap her, banish 2 other Cthulhu Resonators, like those Black Goats. Put target Cthulhu non-spell from your graveyard into your field. So you can bring back a Cthulhu spell, you can bring back a Cthulhu addition, you could bring back a Cthulhu creature, like all kinds of crazy stuff can happen with this card, and it's gonna be one of the really big cards for the Cthulhu deck. Just being able to keep recycling those big bodies over and over again, while filling up your graveyard with stuff like the Black Goat and all kinds of stuff. Then we have, sorry this card's in Italian, we don't have the translation yet, but it is the Spawn of Blazer. It is a 2-drop fire dragon resonator, 400/400 with flying. Activate. Banish 2 will in any combination of attributes. Spend that will only to play dragons. That is nuts. Being able to jump to a turn like a Gilderai or a Blazer, which we'll talk about in a bit, on turn 3 with Spawn and Blazer. Again, red doesn't really have the extra mana generation ability or the draw engine, so being able to just skip turns and play a bigger body faster is insane for red. So it's going to make Bahamut really good. It's going to make a lot of different cards more playable. Going to see more dragon stuff, obviously. So this is a really, really cool card, and I'm really interested to play around and goof around with it. Next up, we have the Hound of Tindalos, another Cthulhu, 1 fire, 1 colorless, 200/200, pretty basic. Except this card gains 200/200 for each card named Hound of Tindalos in your graveyard. So the more of these you have in your graveyard, the bigger this guy gets, potentially as big as an 800/800 if you have 3 copies in your grave. When this card is put into your graveyard from your field, you can pay a fire, and if you do, search your main deck for a card named Hound of Tindalos and put it into your field, rested, then shuffle your deck. So, 1 dies, pay a red, bring out another one that's automatically a little bit stronger, already rested, but that means you can just use it next turn. If they kill that one, do it again, and then eventually you're filling up your graveyard with stuff, as well as getting a bigger body with Hound of Tindalos. Plus, again, it's put into your graveyard from your field from neither player's turn, so it doesn't really matter what it's used for. So you could potentially, sacrifice it with Shub Niggurath, and then get another one right back out to use immediately then. So that would be really, really cool. And then this is the card that I'm most excited about from red, Blazer, the Eater of Dimensions. We've talked about this guy a little bit before in my spoiler video, but I'm just going to talk about him again now. 3 red, 2 colorless, Wanderer Dragon, 11/11. You can play this card from your removed from game area. So, if it dies, it can keep coming back. Swiftness, so it can attack on the same turn it's played. And if the card would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, remove it from the game instead. That includes him, but only if he's already on board. So like if he's going from your hand to the graveyard or something for a discard, or your deck to a graveyard, he's still going to go to grave. But if he is on board and he gets destroyed because of the last known information rules in the CR, the comprehensive rules, he's still going to get removed from the game, and he'll be able to be brought back. That being said, if he's on board, any other effect that would cause a card to go to the graveyard, even if it's from the hand or from the deck or wherever, as long as he's on board, it's going to remove it from the game instead. This is a very important distinction to make known. First off, that he has to be on board in order for this to take effect, and it's instead. The card does not go to the graveyard at all. It goes to the removed from game area instead. So that's important for some specific cards. Next up, Kane Complex, moving into the spells. This is the spell Chant Standby for red. It's a two colorless, 1 red as its like official cost. As always, you just pay 2 mana to play it face down. Trigger: when a resonator your opponent controls is attacking. Till end of turn, gain control of target resonator that didn't attack this turn. So, essentially, you can have them swing in with something, your opponent swings in with something, you trigger Kane Complex, take one of their monsters, make it crash into their other creature, or potentially kill their other creature, and you just get to hold on to it forever because it doesn't say until the end of the turn. So that's really cool, and again, for making holes for Red Rush to kind of rush in with. Again, this is going to be a card that I think is actually going to see play in Red Rush, and I think it's going to be pretty sweet. Spell Chant Instant, another one of the ones that we haven't had translated yet. Crime and Punishment. This card deals X damage to target J/Resonator, where X is the damage it dealt this turn. It's 1-drop fire. So something hits you, and then you go, cool, pay a red, now you're dead. This is really going to be helpful against... to be perfectly honest, I think this is going to replace Duel of Truth. It might not necessarily, but I think it kind of does what Duel of Truth wants to do, without being so dependent on also having a big creature on your side of the board. It's just, oh, you dealt 1,300 to me with your Snow White? Cool, Crime and Punishment, your Snow White takes that 1,300 and then immediately dies. So again, it's less of a situational card than Duel of Truth. And I think could really see a lot of play, and I think it'd be fun to use. This card is the card that I think is going to shape this format, to be perfectly honest. Split Heaven and Earth. 2-drop red, spell Chant. This card inflicts 300 damage to every player for each special magic stone that he or she controls. And think, you can run 4 of these. And you're playing against a deck that runs 3 or 4 colors. Look at all those dual stones that you get to just deal them damage for. I mean, think about it. If your opponent is using 10 special magic stones in their deck, one of these does 3,000 damage. That is insane. I think this is going to see us play a shift back to a lot of life gain stuff, as well as playing more 2-color decks. I think that's going to be really important in the next set, just so that you're not overabundancing yourself with triple color, with dual stones and special stones, which I think is really cool. Because as it stood right now, special magic stones had literally 0 drawback, and this card existing immediately makes them a drawback. So I'm pretty excited about that. Then we have this Spell Chant instance, 1-drop fire, 1-drop colorless, First Lie. Each player chooses a number secretly. They can write it down, they can pick it in their head, whatever. Then those numbers are revealed. Each player with the highest number draws 3 cards and loses 100 life multiplied by the number he or she chose. So, at full life, choose, 8. And if you win, then you get to draw 3 cards and lose 800 life. This is a really tricky card. I think it's going to be complicated for people to see how to play it. I also definitely think that this is going to be a really good card to just mess with your opponent. Like, you play it, you pick 0, and then you don't really want to care about drawing the cards, and your opponent thinks, oh, I really could use the cards right now. I'll play 5, and then they draw 3 cards, but then they immediately lose his 500 life. So doing those kind of things like that. Or if you're playing like Grimia and you're not really worried about like the first few turns, like call 30, and then lose 3,000 life, draw 3 cards, and then you're set up for an immediate Grimia play next turn if you think you can defend it. It's going to be pretty interesting. It's going to be complicated to play, I think, but it is going to be a powerful card. I think that will be pretty fun to use. Then we have the Akashic Records of Eternal Flame. Pay 1 red, 1 colorless. It's an addition field. You can pay 2 less colorless cost to play a card if a card with the same name is in your graveyard. Remember, this is colorless cost. It will not reduce any of this cost that's in the big circle, any of the specific colored cost. It only reduces the colorless cost to play a card if it has the same name with your graveyard. So, have a cards that, like Athos. if you're having Athos and you want to play and for some reason your Puss in Boots is dead or something like that, have this card with an Athos in your grave, still only have to pay 3 in order to play Athos. So it's going to have some unique things. It's going to be definitely more of a support card. I don't know exactly what sets this is going to be huge in, what decks this is going to be huge in, but I think it could potentially have a big impact, especially with cards like Gilderai. I think that's the main thing, is like have a Gilderai in my grave, play a Gilderai next turn for 3 as opposed to 5 or 6. Could be really, really huge. Next up, another addition, we have Bullet of Envy, 1-drop fire edition. Added J/Resonator gains plus 800/800 if your life is less than your opponent. So, force your life to go lower than your opponent, like you were doing before, by drawing cards. Play Bullet of Envy, something is suddenly a plus 800/800. Bam! Just do instant extra damage to your opponent in the swing this turn. Yeah, that's going to be pretty powerful. It's pretty straightforward. It's going to be situational in terms of when Red Rush needs to play this, because as soon as they get their opponent down below them, then Bullet of Envy turns off, but you can always turn it back on. So that's going to be interesting. We'll just see how that gets played around with. And then the last one is Glyph of Unkill. Addition Resonator, 1-drop. Destroy added Resonator at the end of its controller's turn. So, my first thought with this card is Sinbad instant speed, playing red-green. I mean, there's really nothing else to say there, in the fact that I can just say, oh, it's the end of your main phase, you're going into your end phase, let me just put a Glyph of Unkill at instant speed onto one of your creatures, and then I'm going to kill it at the end of the turn for free, and then untap all my mana. Like, this is going to be such a good tech card, I think, for any deck running green. It's going to make them want to move towards teching in red, just because of Sinbad. I personally think that it's playing it on your turn is not going to be very effective, because you give your opponent an entire turn to goof around with it, and with all the different addition removals / ways to banish their own creatures and all kinds of stuff like that, I don't really necessarily know how often this is going to go off. But playing it at instant speed on their turn, and then immediately destroying one of their cards is going to be really, really, really powerful. So this is going to be a card to definitely watch out for, that I'm really going to want to test with. So yeah, there you guys have it. That is fire. That is the entire point of the fire set for Moon Priestess Returns. Go ahead and click the annotation up at the corner or down below in the description to go take it to one of the other sections of the set review. And as always, guys, this is DMO73 signing off.